Retro sci-fi loved to promise us futures full of shiny gadgets, wild ideas, and shortcuts that looked way cooler on screen than they ever could in real life. But here's the catch. Most of those so-called predictions were myths that movies kept recycling. Flying cars, evil corporations, time travel fixes. Sounds familiar, right? So, which of these cinematic dreams actually landed and which crashed hard? Let's break down the myths Hollywood couldn't quit. Flying cars everywhere. Movies love to dangle flying cars as the ultimate symbol of the future. Think Blade Runner, Back to the Future Part 2, or The Fifth Element. They made it look like once the calendar hit the 2000s, the skies would be jammed with hovering traffic jams. The problem? Physics is not that forgiving. The weight, the fuel, the noise, and most importantly, the sheer danger of a traffic accident above your house made this idea almost impossible to scale. Here's the thing though, while the movies kept repeating the myth, engineers actually tried. From the 1,940 seconds conveyor car to modern prototypes tested by startups, people have been obsessed with lifting cars into the sky. But decades later, we're still waiting. Why? Because it's one thing to film Harrison Ford gliding through a neon skyline, it's another to trust your neighbor Carl to handle rush hour while balancing in midair. The movies made flying cars seem natural, as if cities would simply adapt. Yet anyone who has ever sat through real-world infrastructure planning knows even bike lanes can spark endless debates. And air traffic for millions of commuters? Forget it. The closest we've come is luxury prototypes, small, expensive, and impractical for everyday life. So, who actually got it right? The Fifth Element offered the most realistic version. Its chaotic sky highways and constant near collisions captured exactly what this would look like. An absolute mess. Futuristic, yes. Practical, never. The truth is, flying cars remain one of sci-fi's flashiest lies. We didn't get airborne highways. We got more electric scooters. Evil corporations controlling everything. If retro sci-fi had a favorite villain, it wasn't aliens or mad scientists, it was mega corporations. Movies like RoboCop, Soylent Green, and Blade Runner hammered the idea that in the future, corporations would grow so powerful that governments would shrink into the background. They weren't just making gadgets. They owned cities, controlled resources, and bent human lives around profit margins. Sound over the top? Maybe not. The genius of RoboCop is how exaggerated yet believable it feels. Omni Consumer Products doesn't just make tech. It runs the police, dabbles in real estate, and treats a crumbling Detroit like its personal monopoly board. That idea of unchecked corporate power struck a nerve, and for good reason. You don't have to look hard at today's world to see companies bigger than entire nations, with more influence than elected officials. But the myth isn't that corporations could grow huge. That's real enough. The myth is that they would literally control every last aspect of daily life. Movies made it feel like there'd be a single company running your home, your job, even your body. The truth is more subtle. Tech giants dominate markets, yes, but reality has been more fragmented. Instead of one OCP-style overlord, we got dozens of competing giants, each carving up their slice of our attention, our data, and our wallets. Who got it right? Surprisingly, Blade Runner. Its version of corporate rule doesn't show one empire ruling all. It shows neon towers advertising endless brands, each powerful in its own lane, but still fighting for dominance. That messy mix is far closer to the truth. Corporations didn't become our single rulers, they just became unavoidable. And in some ways, that's even scarier. Time travel fixes everything. Few sci-fi myths are as irresistible as time travel, solving all your files and problems. From Back to the Future to The Time Machine, movies sold the fantasy that if you could just hop in a machine, flip a switch, and land in another decade, everything could be undone or perfectly fixed. Got a broken romance? Go back a week. Messed up your job? Reset it yesterday. The timeline bends to your will, at least on screen. But here's the problem. Actual science doesn't play that game. Time is messy. Even if some theories allow for bending it, paradoxes ruin the fun. What happens if you meet yourself? What if you prevent your parents from meeting? The grandfather paradox alone shatters the idea that time travel is a convenient eraser. Yet Hollywood loves this myth because it's dramatically neat. One DeLorean ride, and suddenly the past is tidy, the future brighter, and consequences vanish. Not all movies fell for the easy fix. Primer, a low-budget cult classic, showed just how complicated time loops really are. It's confusing, almost headache-inducing, but that's the point. Time travel would create overlapping realities, chaotic decisions, and outcomes you can't control. Instead of a reset button, you'd get a nightmare flowchart. The myth works because audiences crave second chances. Who wouldn't want to undo mistakes? But in reality, the closest we have is hindsight, and that's brutal enough. So, while Back to the Future gave us the ultimate feel-good myth, Primer gave us the uncomfortable truth. Time doesn't fix things, it multiplies them. Aliens always invade Earth. For decades, sci-fi hammered one idea into our heads. If aliens show up, they're coming for us. From War of the Worlds to Independence Day, the pattern was the same. The skies open, ships descend, and humanity suddenly becomes target practice. It's cinematic, sure, but logically flawed. Why would advanced civilizations cross galaxies just to fight over our dirt, water, or cities? The alien invasion myth thrives because it mirrors human history. We assume outsiders conquer because that's what we did. Empires on Earth grew through expansion, so naturally, movies project that onto the stars. It also gives audiences a neat villain. You don't have to wonder what aliens want if the answer is simple: destruction. But reality might look very different. If life exists out there, chances are it's either so far ahead of us it wouldn't bother, or so alien we couldn't even comprehend its motives. That's what makes Arrival so refreshing. Instead of death rays, the aliens bring language, mystery, and communication challenges. It's not about fighting, it's about understanding. And honestly, that feels more likely. The myth of invasion keeps repeating because it's thrilling. Explosions, fighter jets, and humanity rallying under one flag sell tickets. But science suggests the opposite. Any contact is more likely to be puzzling than hostile. So, while Independence Day gave us fireworks, Arrival gave us nuance. One's fun popcorn, the other feels like the truth. Human-like robots want to harm us. From the Terminator to Westworld, retro sci-fi loved the nightmare of machines that look just like us, blending into society until they turn against their makers. It's one of the most gripping myths, that as soon as we build robots that think or look human, they'll rebel. The idea is everywhere because it taps into our deepest anxieties, being replaced, outsmarted, or outmuscled by our own creations. But here's the twist. Reality so far has taken a softer turn. Today's robots don't resemble Arnold Schwarzenegger kicking down doors. They resemble vacuums, cleaning your carpet, or assistants reminding you of calendar alerts. Instead of infiltrating us, machines integrate into the boring parts of daily life. They're useful, but not plotting. The myth persists because humanoid robots are visually powerful. A chrome skull with glowing eyes is more terrifying than a server farm running algorithms. Yet when you look closer, the biggest real concern isn't rebellion, it's dependence. We already lean on AI for navigation, work, even relationships. The scarier truth is, we might not notice how much control we're handing away, bit by bit. Who got it right? Surprisingly, her. Spike Jonze ditched the killer robot trope and showed a world where AI companions evolve emotionally, not violently. The fear wasn't being chased, it was being abandoned. That kind of subtle disruption feels closer to the truth than any cyborg apocalypse. Robots may not wipe us out, but they might just change what it means to connect, to think, and to matter. Nuclear mutants rule, the wasteland retro. Sci-Fi had a field day, imagining nuclear disaster turning the world into a wasteland filled with mutants. Mad Max, A Boy and His Dog, and countless B-movies sold the idea that if a nuclear blast didn't end you instantly, it would twist survivors into grotesque creatures roaming deserts. It was the ultimate cautionary tale, part fear, part spectacle. But here's the truth. Radiation doesn't work that way. It doesn't suddenly create armies of super mutants with glowing eyes. It causes illness, cancers, and long-term environmental collapse. The instant mutant horde was always more fantasy than fact. Yet filmmakers repeated the myth because it created striking visuals, deformed faces, savage tribes, barren highways. That's far more cinematic than the grim reality of invisible particles slowly destroying health and fertility. Take Mad Max. As much as it looks like a nuclear future, it's actually closer to a story about resource collapse, oil, water, and civilization itself falling apart. That's why it still resonates. The chaos isn't driven by mutants. It's driven by desperate humans, stripped of systems that once held society together. In that sense, Mad Max was more honest than it seemed. Who got it right? Oddly enough, it's the quieter films and real-world science. Post-disaster zones, like Chernobyl and Fukushima show landscapes altered, wildlife adapting, and humans forced out, not mutant armies. Movies exaggerate the monster angle, but reality is slower, quieter, and perhaps scarier. The wasteland doesn't need creatures with 3 arms. The most haunting truth is a silence where life used to thrive. Space colonies are easy to build. Retro sci-fi made colonizing space look as simple as building condos with a better view. Total Recall showed entire cities thriving on Mars. 2001. A Space Odyssey gave us rotating space hotels. The message was clear. Humanity would step off Earth and set up shop in space as if it were just another suburb. But the real challenge is staggering. The vacuum of space, lethal radiation, supply chains, and psychological isolation make colonies anything but easy. Every single breath of air, every drop of water, every bite of food would need careful management. Movies made it look like astronauts could stroll into a dome and live happily ever after. Reality says otherwise. The Martian captured the difficulty far more accurately. Watching Matt Damon farm potatoes out of sheer desperation felt closer to the truth than glamorous space malls. It showed the fragile balance needed to keep one human alive, let alone entire cities. That's the real future of colonization, not neon skylines, but constant maintenance and survival hacks. The myth repeats because it's hopeful. Humanity loves to imagine the next frontier, especially when Earth's problems pile up. But the honest version? Colonies, if they ever happen, will look more like outposts clinging to survival than cities booming with nightlife. So while Total Recall dazzled us with a Martian Las Vegas, The Martian nailed the grit. Space living won't be easy. It'll be exhausting. AI always turns evil. Hollywood has been obsessed with the idea that the second we create true artificial intelligence, it'll immediately decide humans are the problem. HAL, 9,000 inches, 2001. A Space Odyssey. Skynet and Terminator. Vicky and I, Robot. The pattern is clear. Give machines a brain, and they'll flip the switch on us. It's the ultimate Frankenstein's monster myth, updated with circuits instead of stitches. But the reality so far is less about rebellion and more about alignment. AI doesn't hate us. It doesn't feel anything. It follows data, patterns, and goals we set. The real risk isn't malevolent intent. It's human error, bad programming, or misused incentives. In short, AI doesn't need to be evil to cause chaos. It just needs to do exactly what it's told in the wrong context. That's why shows like Star Trek, The Next Generation, got it right. Data, the android officer, wasn't evil. He was curious, flawed, and striving to understand humanity. The drama came from trust, ethics, and limits, not an automatic kill switch. That feels closer to the truth. The future of AI isn't about machines plotting in secret. It's about us struggling to teach them right from wrong. The myth of AI goes rogue persists because it's clean storytelling. Audiences instantly grasp the stakes when a machine turns into a villain, but the deeper truth is murkier. AI might not destroy us with intent, it might just overwhelm us with obedience. And that's a lot harder to put in a movie poster. Virtual reality becomes the new reality. If you believed retro sci-fi, we were destined to abandon the real world for headsets and holograms. The Matrix, Tron, and later Ready Player One pushed the myth that virtual reality would become so addictive and immersive that people would prefer it over actual life. It's a dazzling idea. Why deal with bills or traffic when you could fly through neon cities or fight dragons from your couch? The truth? VR is impressive, but not that all-consuming. Headsets are clunky, expensive, and often uncomfortable for long use. Most people don't want to spend 12 hours with goggles strapped to their face. And while games, simulations, and training tools are powerful, they haven't replaced reality. Instead of total escape, VR is just another layer of entertainment. That said, the warning hidden in The Matrix and echoed in Ready Player One still resonates. The danger isn't that we'll physically live inside machines, but that we'll mentally check out. Social media, streaming, and endless scrolling already eat hours of daily life. We may not be jacked into pods, but how different is losing 3 hours to a virtual feed compared to plugging into a simulation? Who got it right? Ready Player One, ironically. It exaggerated, sure, but it also showed the economic divide, people desperate for escape flocking to VR, while the wealthy still ruled reality. That's the truth. VR isn't replacing life. It's an add-on, a distraction, sometimes a crutch. The myth says it becomes our new reality. The reality says it only highlights how fragile our current one. Island humans will abandon Earth soon. Retro sci-fi often assumed Earth was doomed and that humanity's only hope was to pack up and move. Interstellar dramatized the idea of leaving a dying planet behind. Silent running, imagined forests, preserved in space domes. The myth is seductive, that when things get tough, we'll just relocate to the stars. Out there, fresh starts and new worlds await. Here's the problem. There is no planet B, at least not yet. Even Mars, our closest candidate, is a hostile desert. No breathable air, no protection from radiation, and brutal cold. Movies gloss over the scale of the challenge. It's easier to film Matthew McConaughey blasting through wormholes than it is to show decades of engineering just to keep a handful of humans alive on barren soil. The truth is simpler and harsher. Humanity is far more likely to fight for survival here on Earth than abandon it. Every single system that sustains us, air, water, food, already exists in balance here. Rebuilding that balance elsewhere isn't impossible, but it's centuries away. Interstellar got the emotion right, but the timeline wrong. The story was less about space escape and more about human endurance, which is the real key. Who nailed it? The quiet realism of climate science itself. Movies like The Day After Tomorrow exaggerated disasters, but the truth is slower and more grinding. We won't suddenly flee Earth. We'll adapt, repair, and struggle. The myth says we'll leave. Reality says we can't afford to. Retro sci-fi gave us flying cars, evil corporations, mutant wastelands, and robot uprisings, and audiences ate it up. Some myths collapsed under real science, others hit closer than anyone expected. But here's the real kicker. The future isn't shaped by predictions, it's shaped by choices. So, which myth do you think we're still clinging to? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories we tell about tomorrow.